What if I told you that the difference between retiring in Florida with zero worries and working a part-time shift at a garden center at 70 could come down to a handful of decisions you make in exactly one decade of your life? Not your 20s, not your 50s. One specific 10-year window that almost nobody talks about, and once it closes, it never opens again. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you'll know exactly which decade that is, and more importantly, what to do with it. Picture two brothers, same house growing up, same parents, same schools, same opportunities handed to them on the same plate. They even landed in similar careers and pulled in nearly identical paychecks their entire working lives. Fast forward to age 65, and their worlds could not look more different. One brother is sitting on $1.5 million in investments, owns his home outright, and spends his winters somewhere warm in Florida. He helps cover his grandkids' tuition without blinking, and he genuinely never checks prices when he takes the family out to dinner. His brother retired with about $165,000 to his name, 10 years still left on the mortgage, and a level of financial dread that follows him to bed every night. He picks up part-time shifts at a garden center because Social Security alone doesn't cover the basics. Some nights he's lying awake doing math in his head, trying to figure out if he can afford both his prescriptions and his property tax bill this month. Here's the part that throws people off. You'd assume a gap this enormous had to start early, maybe in their 20s, or blow up during some dramatic midlife crisis. It didn't. Identical genetics, identical upbringing, identical earning power, and yet everything split apart because of choices made inside a single 10-year stretch. It wasn't their 20s or 30s, when both of them were building families and careers the same way. It wasn't their 50s either, because by then the outcome was already baked in. The split happened entirely in their 40s. One brother made a string of decisions that felt completely harmless in the moment. The other made slightly different, equally harmless-feeling decisions. Neither one had any idea that these small, quiet, daily habits were silently writing the script for the rest of their lives. Think about it this way. Your 40s are the single most consequential financial decade you'll ever live through. And it's not because the choices get harder. It's because the stakes multiply in a way you can't see until it's already too late to change direction. To understand why this decade hits so much harder than any other, you need to look at three financial forces that only line up once, and only for about 10 years. Force number one is your income ceiling. For most professionals, earnings peak somewhere between 42 and 55. The exciting yearly raises that defined your 30s start to flatten out, but the raw dollar amount hitting your account is higher than it's ever been, and likely higher than it will ever be again. Your 40s hand you more raw material for building wealth than any other period of your life. Force number two is your remaining runway for compounding. At 40, you've still got 20 to 25 years before a traditional retirement age, which happens to be just enough time for your money to roughly quadruple based on historical market averages. A dollar invested at 40 turns into roughly $4 by 65. Wait until 50, and you've only got 15 years, so that same dollar only reaches about 2.5. Wait until 55, and it barely doubles. The compounding multiplier collapses fast with every year you delay, which makes your 40s the last decade where genuinely explosive growth is still mathematically on the table. Force number three is expense stabilization. By your 40s, a lot of the financial chaos from your 20s and 30s starts to settle down. Kids get more independent, daycare costs disappear, your professional wardrobe is already built, and the house you once stretched to afford now fits comfortably into your budget. This naturally opens up breathing room that simply didn't exist before. And here's the real question that decides everything. Does that breathing room flow straight into your investment account, or does it quietly get swallowed by a bigger lifestyle? When all three forces line up, you get a rare window of leverage. Peak income, just enough time left for compounding to work its magic, and finally, some room to save. Capture that window, and you build real wealth. Miss it, and no amount of hustle later on can undo the math. Let's run the actual numbers so you can see this leverage in action. Say someone hits 40 with $95,000 already saved for retirement. They're earning $115,000 a year, and they save a steady 15%, which comes out to about $17,250 annually. Keep that pace from 40 to 65, investing in a diversified index fund averaging 8% a year, and they land around $1.4 million at retirement. Add Social Security on top, and that's a genuinely relaxed, financially secure retirement. Now, imagine the same person only saves 6% through their 40s, spending the rest on enjoying life, then panics and jumps to 15% at 50 once retirement suddenly feels close. By 65, they've got roughly $760,000. That's a $640,000 gap created by just 10 years of lighter contributions. Here's a third path, and this one happens to millions of people. Same person, same $95,000 at 40, but instead of holding steady, they actually cut contributions down to 3% to fund a major lifestyle upgrade. Bigger house, nicer cars, fancier vacations. At 50, panic sets in and they slam the brakes, saving 22% of their income for the next 15 years straight. Even with that frantic, stressful effort, they only end up with about $610,000 by 65. Their comfortable, easygoing 40s cost them nearly $800,000 in future wealth compared to the person who just stayed consistent. A decade of easy choices dug a hole that an entire decade of extreme discipline couldn't climb out of. So what actually separates these outcomes? It comes down to 5 choices almost everyone faces during this decade. Let's start with career risk, because this one surprises people the most. Your 40s are actually your best window for a major professional leap, joining a growing company, stepping into a senior role, or switching industries where your experience suddenly commands a premium. Ironically, this is exactly when most people get cautious. They've built comfort and seniority where they are, and starting over feels risky. But your 40s are your last real shot at accelerating your income before subtle age bias starts creeping into hiring in your 50s. Taking a calculated risk at 43 still gives you time to recover if it doesn't pan out. Waiting until 53 does not. Next comes housing, and this is often the biggest one. Your 40s bring an almost magnetic pull to upgrade your living situation. The kids want their own rooms, you've hit a stride professionally, and you want a home that reflects it. Because your income is at its peak, a bigger mortgage payment feels totally manageable. A family moving from a $375,000 home to a $625,000 one typically adds about $1,600 to $2,100 to their monthly costs. That's up to $25,000 a year that no longer goes toward investing. Stretch that gap out over 25 years of compounding, and you're looking at over $1.1 million in lost future wealth. That upgrade doesn't just cost you a bigger mortgage, it quietly costs you a chunk of your future freedom. This isn't a blanket argument against ever buying a bigger home. It's that most people make this move without ever calculating what it's actually trading away. Then there's vehicles. Your 40s are prime territory for trading the practical sedan in for a prestige SUV. A household running 2 $48,000 vehicles instead of 2 $30,000 ones takes on more debt, higher insurance, and steeper repair bills. Across a lifetime of trade-ins, that gap alone can quietly erase $220,000 to $420,000 from a retirement account. Fourth is kids and education. These are the most expensive parenting years, packed with sports, activities, cars, and eventually college. Out of love and a little guilt, plenty of families take on parent loans well past $100,000 to send a kid to a prestigious out-of-state school, while quietly pausing their own retirement contributions in the process. The kid graduates with their whole career ahead of them. The parents enter their 50s with a gutted retirement account and barely a decade left to fix it. Families who navigate this well tend to make the uncomfortable choice, pushing state schools, encouraging kids to work or take on small loans themselves, and refusing to pause their own savings no matter what. Actually, think about which one of these 5 you'd struggle with the most. The house, the car, the college fund, the career risk, or just keeping up with your friends. Drop it in the comments, because I guarantee you already know the answer, you just haven't said it out loud yet. The 5th and final decision is lifestyle inflation itself. Your 40s bring real social pressure to visibly show success, as coworkers renovate kitchens, buy boats, and post vacation photos from places you've never been. Some people resist that pull and keep living the way they did in their late 30s. Others let their spending expand right alongside their income, absorbing every extra dollar into things people can see. Let's put faces to this. Tyler and Amanda hit 40 with a combined income of $170,000, a modest house, and $170,000 already saved for retirement. When the pull to upgrade their home hit them, Amanda pushed back, walking through the actual math out loud with Tyler. They stayed in their modest house, and that $1,700 monthly difference went straight into their investment account instead. They bought certified pre-owned cars in cash, and they had honest conversations with their kids about attending in-state schools with merit scholarships. Their 40s looked plain next to their neighbors, and yes, they felt that pressure constantly. But by 50, their retirement account had more than tripled to $600,000. By 65, they had $1.7 million, an owned home, and the freedom to travel without a second thought. Now picture Kevin and Melissa, starting in almost the identical spot. $170,000 combined income, 2 kids, $190,000 saved. When the itch to upgrade hit, they gave in, and their monthly housing cost rose by $1,700. To cover it, they dropped their savings rate from 15% to 7%, telling themselves it was temporary. A couple years later, both cars got upgraded to luxury models. When their son got into an out-of-state school, they took on serious parent loans to make it happen. None of it felt reckless in the moment because everyone around them was doing the exact same thing. By 50, their retirement account had only crept up to $250,000. They spent their 50s in a full-blown scramble, maxing out every account they had. But by 65, they'd only reached $700,000. Their own projections showed they'd likely run out of money by 83. Meaning selling the house or working well into their 70s. Here's the strange part. During their actual 40s, both families reported feeling just as happy day to day. Research on lifestyle inflation backs this up consistently. The boost in happiness from a bigger house or a nicer car fades within about 2 years, and then it just becomes the new normal. Kevin and Melissa didn't enjoy their 40s more than Tyler and Amanda did. They just spent more. That extra spending bought them nothing lasting, while quietly dismantling their financial security for every decade that followed. So where does that leave you? If you're in your 20s or 30s, you now have something incredibly rare: advance warning. You know your 40s are coming with intense, invisible pressure to blow up your budget right as your income peaks. Build automatic savings habits now and decide in advance what enough actually looks like, before your income makes excess an option. If you're stepping into your 40s right now, you're standing at the single most important financial fork you'll ever face. Take a hard look at your housing, your vehicles, and your spending patterns today. And remember, every yes to a bigger lifestyle is a direct no to your future security. If you're already in your late 40s or 50s, and you can see you've been on the wrong path, there's still time to shift course. Consider downsizing sooner rather than later, letting go of an expensive car, or taking on a higher-paying role, even if it pushes you outside your comfort zone. Every single extra percentage point you add to your savings rate right now moves your outcome dramatically. The real psychological trap in all of this is the belief that you've earned the right to finally spend after 2 decades of hard work. But that framing is dangerous. The satisfaction from a bigger house or a nicer car fades fast, and what's left behind is decades of tighter finances. Genuine satisfaction doesn't come from consuming your peak earning years. It comes from converting them into permanent freedom. The discomfort of staying disciplined in your 40s lasts 10 years. The peace it buys you lasts 30. Meanwhile, the thrill of spending freely in your 40s lasts maybe 2 or 3 years, but the financial stress that follows can last 3 decades or more. Picture yourself at 70, sitting quietly in your living room on an ordinary morning. In one version of that future, you're relaxed, planning a trip to see your grandkids, completely unbothered by the idea of an unexpected bill. In the other version, you're staring at a calculator wondering if this month's Social Security check covers your medications. Both of those 70-year-olds are built entirely from what happens between 40 and 50. That decade decides everything, and now you know it. If this shifted how you're thinking about your own 40s, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know down in the comments which version of that 70-year-old you're building toward right now.